Okay, hi everybody. We are the Right Spotters, Chris and Shane back again. Today we want to talk about fitness jargon. It's jargon is occupation specific terminology that civilians, for lack of a better term, non-professionals don't necessarily understand and don't necessarily need to hear. I actually have an example that I pulled off of a very successful coach's personal blog. So it was self-published. He didn't write this for a specific website to sell. He writes, when we allow the knees to move past the toes during a traditional squat, we're producing a horizontal force vector against a primarily vertical force, which represents a mismatch of force vectors that not only compromises force production and absorption, it also places undue strain on the joints and connective tissue as the muscles are in a biomechanically disadvantageous position to absorb and produce force. Force vectors is a term that doesn't need to be shared. It means essentially the direction of resistance. Force vectors as a phrase brings up physics and geometry in my mind. It's overcomplicated. There's no reason to overcomplicate your writing or your message. It doesn't help. It doesn't help get your message across. It doesn't help to clarify whatever point you're trying to make. Shane, what are your thoughts on jargon in general?
I'm just getting over that paragraph for one.
It was a single sentence. It was one sentence.
Was it what? Was it what? The most disturbing part about it is I understand that sentence, which is crazy as it is because I'm in the industry. But yeah, so yeah, just use that what you just said as an example. I think you use that as an exhibit A of how not to write. Period. But particularly, even if you're writing, even if his blog is for other trainers, you wouldn't write like that. What that shows is a lack of understanding on how to explain it simply, right? Because that's the only way he knows how to explain doing a knees over toe squat. And even even if what he said makes sense, it's wrong.
Well,
right.
Yeah.
So we have the old knees over toes guy, and we have Squat University, and we've had that whole debate about how not to have your knees over your toes with squat, and we already know that's complete crap. For one, right? It just depends. Like anything, it depends on the goal. But one of my thoughts on jargon is that it's very audience specific, right? So for me, just say because I love using me as an example. So my blog, that would be pointless on my blog because nobody would understand what I was saying. I would say that if you drive your knees over your toes when you squat, if it doesn't hurt your knees, you're good to go. If it doesn't feel great, then you need to sit back a little bit more and watch what you're doing with your knees or go within a specific range of motion. I think that kind of language alienates your audience, right? That's a turn off, right?
Yeah.
It's just like you'd read that and you'd go, well, I have no idea what he's saying. I'm going to click off this page now. See you later. It's like a huge turn off. But then on the other hand, you don't want to completely dumb stuff down and say and treat your audience like a moron. So there's that huge gap in between what we've got to work with, right? Between using complicated language and using too simple languages, there's that whole space in the middle, and that's a large space, and it's a space where most of us, if you write anything fitness, need to be in. But again, it's very audience specific. I've had and you've been an editor. So you understand coaches contribute stuff, and you're like, you read that and they get too technical. So you know that. And I've been in the position of at Muscle and Fitness where, I've had coaches contribute to me and they get too technical. And I change it. Then I said, well, I think jargon is great. And I think, you've worked very hard to know all that jargon. You've gone to college, you know your stuff, but your audience hasn't. You don't want to put people down for using it because they've worked hard for it, right?
Correct. Right.
And I've worked hard for it, but I think with jargon, like I said, there's that space in the middle, but there's a time and a place.
Yeah, no, definitely. You covered a whole bunch of ground there.
Oh, I talk too much. Sorry, Chris. I took over the whole conversation.
Not even. That's the point. I think fundamentally it comes down, like you said, it's audience specific. If you're writing on your own blog or your own social media pages, it's good to have an ideal, like you need to know your demographic. Like as a trainer, you need to know your demographic. Sometimes they call it like your ideal avatar, your customer avatar, your client avatar, whatever. Know the audience you're aiming for. Like, for example, Elite FTS is for strength athletes, powerlifters specifically. It's not really for competitive CrossFit athletes. It's not really for natural bodybuilders necessarily. There's some crossover, but whatever. Their ideal focus target is competitive powerlifters. So that will inform the type of content they put up. Like you're not going to see much, biceps training focused articles on there, here and there, whatever.
Or glute activation.
Plenty of glute activation, always the glutes. That's a whole other demographic. So you need to know your audience you're writing for. This coach who chose to go so in depth about force vectors, I'm not sure what their ideal audience is, but you need to, like you said, writing in jargon can very easily alienate and make somebody feel dumb. And you don't want to do that as a trainer. That's the equivalent of you're in the gym, walking the gym floor, and you just rep out 315 on the bench and, slam the weights back down when you rack it. And if you're going to intimidate a 70-year-old lady who otherwise would have hired you, like that's not helpful. That's not helpful to your business.
No. That's exactly right. Like I said before, it's a turnoff.
It definitely is. Part of that also has to do with if you're writing for publication, like I said, different websites have their own focus and have their own voice and their own target audience. If you're writing for, let's say, Shape Magazine, you might not necessarily need to talk about, or you might need to clarify the posterior chain. Like you can't assume the average Shape Magazine reader. Is Shape Magazine still around? I don't know. You can't assume the average reader. What's up?
I think so.
You can't assume the average reader knows what the posterior chain is. Glutes, hamstrings, lower back.
Yeah. You can just say glute, hamstring, lower back, right?
Exactly. Yes. If you're talking
posterior chain.
Yeah, if you're talking shop with another trainer, not publishing work, we could talk about the posterior oblique sling. We can talk about ipsilateral training. Like we can talk about higher level stuff because, like you said,
Chris, I'm getting excited now. Stop it! I'm getting excited.
Okay, not too excited. Like we know the average intelligence of our audience. We're talking trainer to trainer. We're talking among peers. In your writing, you're not writing to peers unless you're trying to just, toot your own horn. But that's not going to help your business either. You're writing for clientele generally. You're writing to spread your information. And if you talk over people's heads, like you said, they're going to tune out. They're not going to keep reading. They're going to click off and find somebody else who they can relate to, who's actually trying to teach them.
Yeah, you bring up an extra. An immediate thought is that you want it to be accessible,
Hmm.
right? And we've talked about being actionable, having content that people can go, hey, I know what you say, do this, this, and this, and then you do this. So when you write with excessive jargon, that just takes that all away.
Hmm. Yeah, because
Right?
they can't get those takeaways. They can't learn what you're trying to teach if you're trying to teach anything. And
Well, yeah, that's true. And I'm going to get this quote wrong, and it's a quote I used lots of times, and
mhm,
it's attributed to Albert Einstein. It says, if you can't explain something simply, then you have gaps in your knowledge.
yep, yeah,
So
exactly.
that's when you go back and you need to relearn your stuff.
Yeah, 100%. Because
Right?
every training or nutrition concept can and should be simplified to a point without losing the core message to make it accessible to, like you said, making it accessible to the reader.
True.
I actually had one instance with a coach contributed an article that I was editing, and it was about a specific exercise, and he was talking about contract the triceps surae and use a full range of motion when training the triceps surae throughout the whole article. Triceps surae, and I'd never heard that muscle before. I'm like, triceps is triceps. Like, I looked it up, and it's calves. The triceps surae is a technical term for the calf muscle. So I edited it. I went through the whole thing, made the changes, sent him a note. I said, hey, just as a heads up, like this is overcomplicated, so we're just going to call it calves. And he said, oh, no problem. That's how I learned it, and that's the physiology speaking. I'm like, no problem. But in future writing, there's no reason. Nobody's going to know what the triceps surae is. So that was a hands-on practical approach that if this coach had self-published and put that up on his Instagram or on his own blog, it would have dissuaded a lot of people. And he's a sharp guy; he knows his stuff. But it was just very confusing, and there's no reason for it.
Yeah, I think it goes again. That goes back to the point of knowing your audience, right?
That's huge, and that's a core to any business, fitness trainers especially. Like, trainers have their ideal client, whether it's 40-year-old single moms, whether it's competitive power lifters. Every fitness trainer, every successful fitness trainer has an ideal client. Like, I don't know many trainers that say, I'll train anybody. Like, you're capable of training anyone, yeah. But your ideal client, the one that forms the majority of your clientele, the most of your hours are spent training, the one you focus your knowledge base on, that's who you're talking to most of the time. So you need to keep that in mind always.
It's true. I know we're going to veer off tangent just a little bit here. So there's that people use that term toning. I want to tone a muscle, and there's some coaches who go, well, that's you can't tone a muscle.
Mm.
And there's other coaches who go, well, that's the language my client uses, so that's what I'm going to use so I don't upset them.
Right.
So there's two in the and that this is kind of falls into jargon. There's arguments for and against that. So if you're going to use jargon, I think a good advice is be educational about it.
Yep.
Right. So there's going to be a time and a place where something is going to be complicated. There's no way to kind of dumb it down, but you can use jargon and then you can explain it.
Yeah. No.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
that's that middle ground I was talking about. So
Mm-hmm.
for me personally, and again, I know I'm a little off tangent here, but I would never use the word tone. And I think coaches who do, just because their audience uses it, is a cop out.
Mm.
Right? You don't treat your audience stupid, right?
Right.
You go, yeah, muscle tone. You can explain, and that's when you have a chance to be educational and educate your audience. But to just go, I'm going to use this term because my clients use it. There's one coach who does it, and I'm not going to mention his name because I really like him, and it just annoys me. So yeah, again, there's two sides of the coin. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I've seen posts like that with pro-toning and anti-toning. I see both. I agree with both. I get the whole point. You need, like you said, you need to speak your client's language, but take the opportunity, seize the opportunity to educate. Like we just said, posterior chain. You know, instead of saying, you know, today we're going to hit your posterior chain, you know, today we're going to train your glutes, hamstrings, and lower back. One example I really like with the way you can kind of, and again, this is more of a tangent, not so much jargony, but you can play with language based on your audience. If you explain the deadlift will give you jack traps and steel cable spinal erectors and massive forearms and an iron grip. Or the deadlift will burn a bunch of calories when you do it. It'll tighten up and strengthen and firm up your glutes. It'll build your upper back so your posture helps, and it'll support your whole upper body. Like, one of those definitions will appeal to a certain audience, and the other definition will appeal to a different audience. But it's still the exact same exercise. It's how you get your message across. It's how you respect your audience. It's how you adjust your message slightly without compromising, because both of those are true.
Yeah.
You don't compromise the information. You make it presentable in a way that it actually sinks in. So
that's a great point.
And it all circles back to knowing who you're talking to. That's a little easier if you're getting published. Like Testosterone Nation has a target audience that's different from Box Rocks, whatever. That's different from Garage Gym Reviews. That's different from Runner's World. Every one of these websites has a different ideal client. So if you want to write for all of them, which get your message across as many avenues as possible, you need to respect who you're talking to in each one. So and that's about the skill of writing. It doesn't change your message, doesn't change your knowledge base at all. You still know what you know. It's just about how you explain what you want to explain.
Sure. Sure. And I think that just goes back to you have to read lots of stuff to figure it out for yourself, to figure out how you want to. I know there's a like crossover into finding your voice a little bit that we spoke about last time. There's that crossover there, but that's also about if you want to write in a particular way for a particular audience, then read other people who do the same thing.
Of course, yeah, and that's being a professional fitness writer. You need to investigate and know a little bit about the publication you want to appear in. That's just, again, that's part of the business of fitness writing.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
that's true. Great point, Chris.
Thank you, Shane. I try.
Will you succeed?
That's it. I don't know anything like it really comes back to avoid fitness jargon because there's no real benefit to it. It's showing off. It's self-serving. Unless you're writing for a PubMed, unless you're writing a scholarly research piece, then go head over heels. Go crazy with the in-depth, because that's appropriate for that publication. But if you want to be a well-published fitness writer, you need to know how to get your information across so that people read it and enjoy it and are better for it.
Amen.
Cool.
Perfect.
Closing thoughts? Anything?
Sorry?
Any closing thoughts? Anything?
No, you covered it, baby. I think we're good.
Perfect. Thank you all again for tuning in. Hope you took something away here. If you have any questions, email them at thewritespotters@gmail.com. Write with a W, because we're talking writing. You can find us on all the socials at The Right Spotters, and we will catch you later. Bye.
Yeah.